PEC 241. That might mean very little to most of us, but in Brazil, it's causing an uproar and filling the streets with protests. What is it? Well, it's a constitutional amendment that, if approved, will freeze the Brazilian budget for public spending for the next 20 years. Let me repeat that. For the next 20 years, public spending in Brazil will be capped, albeit with adjustments for inflation. That's right. After a decade, after major advances that have lifted millions out of poverty in Brazil, the country, under the imposed conservative president Michel Temer, is doing an about-face. And it's about to lock itself in a massive austerity program for the next 2 decades. No new funds for education, no new funds for health or housing, no way to tackle the country's still staggering inequality. Not good. In response, people have hit the streets en masse. High school students who recognize that they are going to be saddled with the burden of the reform have been leading the charge. Students have occupied nearly 1,000 schools and universities across the country. Over 2/3 of the population say they are against the measure. But that isn't about to stop conservative politicians who are looking to secure their policies for years to come and benefit from the outcome. The government has also announced a massive plan to sell off public infrastructure, businesses, and resources. So, who is behind all of this? To start with, President Michel Temer, who was imposed after a corrupt Congress impeached the Workers' Party president Dilma Rousseff. Temer says PEC 241 is the only way to tackle the country's worst recession since the 1930s. The Brazilian Congress, which is the most conservative since the fall of the dictatorship, is only too happy to oblige. The reform has already overwhelmingly passed the lower house, and it's headed for final approval in the Senate in the coming weeks. What can we expect? You guessed it. Analysts say the move will only further concentrate resources in a few hands. Increased poverty, increased inequality. You know, it's true Brazil's economy is in bad shape, but the coup government is taking advantage of the crisis and moving its agenda. Already, major cuts to social spending have been announced for next year, and it's only going to get worse.